I promised it, and it is finally here. Just how strong is Ichibe'e Hyōsube, and why is he stronger than you're probably expecting? Tonight we go into the hidden potential that lurks behind Ichibe'e Hyōsube's Ichimunji's Bankai. It is absolutely insane. I mean, it's insane what we see from it to begin with. But the potential of this Bankai is much greater than what we initially saw on screen. And today we're going to play a little game at the end of the video where we discuss what its true capabilities might be and why Ichibei may not have been able to use it to its full potential in his fight against Yuha. Now, I'm going to peel back the curtain a little bit here. This is actually the second video tonight I have done on this. I just completed like a 26-minute video where I was going over Ichibei and all his strengths, and I made a huge mess up along the way. Now, if you want to know what that is, a little bit of retention bait, if you will, you have to wait to the end of the video to just have a good laugh on why I was so stupid to have to need to re-film this whole video at 11 o'clock at night. But that's neither here nor there. Let's get into this video. And we need to do a little bit of table setting first. In these How Strong videos, I like to go over the base fundamentals. A character's strength, a character's speed, their combat power, and their intelligence, Ryatsu, special abilities like Kido, stuff like that. We'll keep it quick, because frankly I've already gone over this once tonight. But in terms of, we need to go over speed first, because this then goes towards his strength. In speed feat, he has one of the most impressive on-screen concrete feats that we get in the entire show. And it is where he, thanks to he's able to summon, we'll get into this later, but he's able to summon astral hands and feet, kind of like a Susanoo-like ability, to slap and impact people away, to strike people away. And he does this to Yuha, and he sends him 4,000 kilometers in the other direction. The immense feat of this ability, though, isn't just how far he sent him. It's the fact that he instantly, with Shunpo, is able to immediately appear at his side. That is a distance of essentially light speed travel, which is insane that he's able to travel 4,000 kilometers in the blink of an eye, less than that. It is one of the greatest on-screen speed feats we get from Bleach, and we know characters like Yuha, Ichigo at this time in his final battles with Yuha and Aizen, outscaling Yuha in terms of speed, meaning that they're faster than what we see here by Ichibei, meaning it's a good kind of reference point to rank and scale the characters that are stronger than Ichibei. So I'm glad that Kubo gave us this kind of a core metric that we can use Klingon to judge a character's speed. Because this is also without Ichibei really trying he's that quick. To give you comparison, one of the best feats we see in Bleach is Espada number 1, Coyote Stark, appearing in front of almost completely butchered her name. I did butcher her name there. Jesus, Jack. Orihime immediately appearing to her, grabbing her, and instantly traveling to the other side of Las Noches without Zaraki and Kenpachi being able to react to it. Now, fan calculations estimate Las Noches being anywhere between 400 to 1,000 kilometers in diameter. Meaning, Stark travels half of that instantly. We don't know if it's in one step. Obviously, Sonido and Shunpo, or Flash Step, are done in steps. Ryatsu gets summoned to their feet, which then sends them off into the distance. But it was one of the best speed feats we got a long time into the series. And to give you, like we said, it's anywhere between kind of 400 kilometers to 1,000 kilometers based off Naliel saying it would take like 3 days to walk around. Meaning, Ichibei is doing 4,000 kilometers. Meaning, if you take the upscale version of Las Noches and call it 1,000 kilometers and then say that it was 500 kilometers, because it wasn't from one end to the other that Stark did, it was more like halfway and then back. So if he's traveling 500 kilometers instantly, it is literally, what's my math here? It was 4,000 kilometers, wasn't it? So it's 8 times greater than what we saw there with Stark. Correct me if I'm wrong there. I make no effort to try pretend to be a mathematician, even though it's very, very basic multiplication. But you all know what I'm trying to say here. It is insanely quicker than what we've seen with feats like Stark, which was one of the most impressive speed feats that we have seen before. So Ichibei and Ichimunji, they're so similar, I always kind of get them confused when I'm talking about them. But he has one of the greatest speed feats in the series and is one of the fastest characters. I could have spared the last 5 minutes and just said, because he's one of the 2 strongest characters in, we'll call it Soul Society. I'm just going to, for simplicity, we'll say the Royal Palace, the Royal Guards, and the Seirei are all one in the Soul Society, just for simplicity. He is one of the 2 strongest characters that are affiliated with that faction, himself and Yamamoto. People like Ichigo and Aizen don't count due to betraying them and not being a part of it. But they are, without a doubt, the 2 strongest members. Whether or not which way you want to put them, that is a video I'm going to do in the future, so I'm not going to shoot myself in the foot and tell you who I think would win there. I do think it's close enough that a fight is interesting. But if we went with where I think Ichibe's Bankai could go, not as interesting as what it might be without it. But that's just another attention-baiting hook to get you to stick around to the end to see just what, to kind of decide what I'm talking about with, like, Jesus, how strong does Jack think that Ichibei might be? Insanely strong, I reckon. However, his strength feat is tied with his speed feat because he appears in front of him and then knocks him all the way back to the starting point, which is an absurd level of strength. We know that he's a master Kido, being able to use hidden Kido that we had never even seen before. He can use his, kind of like his base Zanpakuto abilities, if not his Shikai abilities, but kind of what we can see from his base Zanpakuto abilities, to create barriers that prevent people from passing, and being able to use it to create optical illusions to hide the entirety of the royal palace. He's able to contend with Yuha in a sword fight. Well, it's not, he's using a calligraphy brush, but he's able to contend in Zanjutsu with Yuha, who is massively proficient in it. He carries a broadsword that he uses to devastating results. So the fact that Yuha is able to contend with someone as powerful as Yuha in a sword fight is no small feat. You can basically just say that Ichibei is stronger than the strongest in all 4 realms of Soul Reaper ability. To me, Ichibei is a transcendent being. I don't know if we ever get that confirmed. Correct me if I'm wrong, but with what he's able to do, and you'll see this if you don't already know, more I go into it, I would call him a transcendent level being up there with like Mugetsu Ichigo and Hyōgyako Aizen. But he has the power over names and blackness. Now, the names, I think, kind of come from the blackness, because it's all ink, which is a part of blackness. But we can call them 2 separate power systems to his overall power. He has the power over names, which gives him a few hacks abilities before we even get into his fighting style. Anyone that, a little bit like with Harry Potter and Voldemort, in the terms of the names have powers. And we see this in Bleach. This is something we should go over, actually, before we get into Ichibei's power. We need to discuss this. Names in Bleach hold a lot more power than in other series. We see this in 2 prime examples. Urahara in Ichigo's training way back when tells him that an attack is exponentially stronger when you know what its name is and when you call it out. That's why we get Ichigo sprouting out, Getsuga Tensho. That's not just for dramatic effect. That's not just for flair. It actually enhances Ichigo's attack. It is also shown with Renji, where for the longest time he is calling out the incorrect name of his Bankai, meaning his Bankai is weaker than what it should be, because it doesn't think that Renji is ready enough to utilize its full strength. So these are 2 prime examples that we see of Ichibei's talent of names, why names are so prevalent and so important in Bleach. Now, anyone that calls out his name, that speaks his name, that is not worthy, that is too weak to call upon Ichibei, has their voice robbed from them. just because he can. No real reason, but he can rob people of their names. He's also the one that named pretty much everything in the Soul Society. He's the first one to give names to, we'll call a Zanpakuto. He's the one that names all Zanpakuto from their core Asasuchi forms. So he has control over all names in existence, essentially. He can also revive himself through someone calling out his name. Once his name is called out, once he is dead, he is able to then channel some of their power and them chanting his name to then revive himself. That is why I consider him a transcendent being, because he can technically not die as long as there is people in existence that know of his name. Now, he doesn't revive himself and have all of his power at his arsenal. He does need to wait for that power to, come back to resupply to himself, but he can bring himself back to life, which is crazy. We see, I'm not going to get into it because it's spoilers, but there is some shenanigans with the Zero Division that Ichibe seems to be able to do just by himself, just through his raw ability. If you know, you know. If, people are like, oh, Jack, why aren't you telling me this? I want to be spoiled. You'll find out about it next season, so it's nothing too crucial or important. You'll learn about it very much soon, and I don't want to spoil it, but Ichibe kind of has the ability just through his raw talent, which is just exceptional. Like we said, he can summon like the Susanoo hands and feet to crush opponents, send them 4,000 kilometers away. But let's get into his Zanpakuto. Let's get into the Ichimunji and what that entails. Now, it is an incredibly powerful Zanpakuto where, and we're going to get into it, its Shikai appears to be stronger than its Bankai. Wait 1 second, we'll touch on it in a moment. What he can do is that there's 3 different levels of it. He can rob someone of, he can rob a person's body of its power, in the sense of if he sprays ink on a person's arm, the word arm on that person then gets shortened, it gets cut in half. Now this is a lot cooler and in aesthetics with kanji. The way it's like written like so beautifully and in like one character being split in half. If we were to convert it to English, it would be like arm, A-R-M, being cut down to just A. And by cutting that down, it robs it of half its strength. Meaning someone's arm will then become half as strong as it was. If you get it coated on into your entire body, you become half as powerful as you are. His Shikai, on the other hand, completely robs you of your power. It robs you of your name. And if you get completely covered in the ink, which is very easy for someone like Ichibe to do. And we see this with Yuha, where he gets robbed of everything that he knows, everything that makes up the name of Yuha Ba'a. And we see this before this, where he gets robbed from Yuha Ba'a to just Yuha. His name gets cut in half, and he loses half his strength. His Shikai gets activated, and then his strength goes down to 0. And then Ichibe goes to take him down. Yuha, though, activates his Ashwelin, summons up his power and kind of revitalizes himself. He's even able to present himself his own name, because Yuha just has that drip. He can just do things like that. So Yuha is the perfect countermeasure to this ability, but it is incredibly powerful that would work on pretty much anyone else in the series. I will say right now, to give people excited for Ichibe vs Yamamoto, it probably wouldn't work on Yamamoto, because if he covered Yamamoto in that ink, I don't see why Yamamoto's Bankai wouldn't just burn the ink off of him, making him slightly immune potentially. But once again, that's a future video that we're going to get into. Now, his Bankai, on the other hand, has the ability to not rob something of its name, not to erase a name. It gives him the ability to change the name of whatever he deems. Now, this is very, very powerful, and we're going to get into it in a second, but we also need to talk about one more technique. And that is the death, I can't remember for the life of me the Japanese name, and I would butcher it anyway, but it translates to the Death Mausoleum, which essentially creates kind of a reality marble / domain expansion, if you're a fan of the Fate series or Jujutsu Kaisen, where it creates, Ichibe summons all the blackness from the 3 worlds in all the universe. He robs the Sarete of like 100 nights of its existence, or some crazy kind of brutal ritual like that. It is badass him using it. He then summons it into a massive sake cup and drinks it. And it robs Yuha, it turns his body, blood, and bones into blackness, into nothingness. And it turns Yuha into nothingness, and it eliminates him from the cycle of rebirth, which is crazy that Ichibei can do this. We have never seen a technique that can erase someone from the cycle of rebirth. The way he takes it from all three worlds and 100 nights of a nation's future as well, which is just maddening to think of. The only issue is we don't see it actually put into action, because before he can finish it, Yuha activates his Almighty and literally obliterates Ichibei, meaning we don't get to see it truly in action. But it touches on, we said in the beginning, there's the power of names and there's the power of blackness. Ichibei can control everything that is black in the world. He holds the dominion over that. So much so that the power of blackness cannot be used against him. If someone steals his power and reflects it back onto him, it won't do anything to Ichibei. Now, blackness in this context is Kubo's definition, I believe, here of trying to kind of symbolize nothingness, which is an incredibly powerful concept that we see in different levels of fiction. Meaning, he has the power to turn someone into nothingness, and that is what eliminates them from the cycle of rebirth, which is absolutely crazy. Quite possibly, potentially the strongest ability we see in the show, just like from a single technique. Obviously, there are things like Almighty, which is kind of like a more, a non-active ability that kind of just Yuha utilizes. I'm looking for a word here. He doesn't need to continue. It's not like he's using different techniques from it. It is always active. There's a specific word I'm looking for. Apparently, I'm not a mathematician or a goddamn can't even say it. Literacy expert. Jesus, Jack, you know it's too late to be doing these videos when you're getting all these words wrong. But let's get back onto his Bankai. In my last go at this video, it's painful just to remind myself of this fact. The way I summarized Ichibei's power is that if you took it from Dragon Ball standpoints of doing power levels, let's say that Ichibei at his strongest is a 1 million power level, right? Let's say... I am too tired. Let's say Yuha is a 1 million level power level. When Ichibei uses his Shikai and robs him of his name, Yuha drops to a 0 level power level. He gets robbed of all of his strength. But then, Ichibei's Bankai then takes, like I said, he can rewrite onto someone and change someone into something else by what he writes on them with his calligraphy brush. In this case, he turns Yuha into a black ant, meaning he gains all the powers of an ant, which is completely broken. I just did a video ranking the top 10 most broken Bankai. If I remember, I'll chuck it up on screen, and it does get a mention in that list. You're going to have to go find out where I put it. However, a black ant is still stronger than nothing. Fight me on that. I will philosophically debate you that an ant is stronger than nothing. Meaning that his Bankai is actually increasing Yuha's strength from 0 to 1, if we were still going with the power leveling. Meaning, it is not as strong as the Shikai for what it can do to an opponent. And Yuha, goes with the Almighty and he eventually beats Ichibei. We're not here to discuss that. We're here to discuss his Bankai. There is no Bankai in existence that is weaker than its Shikai counterpart. It goes against the entire nature of what a Zanpakuto is. Even with cases like Shinji, where his Bankai is not useful in a one-on-one battle, its technique is still so broken that it is an increase in strength. He just can't utilize it in select circumstances. Now, Shinji's Bankai is also mentioned in that video I mentioned, so another reason to go check it out. A very underrated character. But Ichibei's Bankai has to have more to it than that. It doesn't make sense for it to be weaker than his Shikai. So what are some possibilities of it being stronger? And why could he not utilize it potentially to its strongest standpoint? Now, this is all just subjective, obviously, but let me know down in the comments if you agree with me when we get into just why it is like this. We're going to discuss what its potential abilities could be, and then why he potentially couldn't use it to make some sort of narrative sense. Now, He can change someone into someone as powerful as Yuha, as a god tier character, into an ant. He's transfiguring him into an ant, not his actual body, but the essence of his strength to represent an ant. What happens if he was to then use this power on someone weaker, like someone like Ganju or Orihime or Chad? If he used Ichimunji's Bankai, wrote on the kanjis for Yamamoto, for instance, or wrote on the kanjis of like giant or, unstoppable or immortal or all-powerful, words like this, would that character then gain that level of strength? Obviously, it's limited to the amount of Ryatsu that Ichibei has, but is he able to turn a weak character into an ultimate powerhouse of a character? Imagine by writing Yamamoto's name on someone, he could then transform them to have that level of power. Or if he if he wrote the words of another person's Zanpakuto, like Senbon Zakura, or, Ryujin Jaka, or Kyoka Suigetsu, and someone else's Zanpakuto, would it then transform it to have those properties? And you might be thinking, Jack, there's absolutely no narrative way that makes any sense. He transforms a god into an ant. I don't see why he can't transform an ant into a god. I reckon that he has the ability to do it. It makes no sense why he wouldn't be able to transform someone more powerful, make someone more powerful than what they are if he deems it what he wants, to get the numbers advantage on someone. What happens as well if you just take other people out of it? No one else is around. This is, a Colosseum battle, one-on-one against Yuha. He uses his calligraphy brush onto the ground and then writes different things on the ground, like, the earth will immediately erupt and everything along with it will be pulverized into nothing. Or he writes into, like, the sky, 1,000 meteors will strike you down. Or he writes it onto the earth, Yamamoto, and he summons fake copies of Yamamoto. And you might be thinking, Jack, that's reality warping powers. And I will argue, do you remember a character called Gremmy? He had the power of imagination. Are you telling me that the strongest Soul Reaper cannot do something that a Stern Ritter like that couldn't do? He doesn't have the potential to do it? When we see what he can do, where he can alternate reality by turning someone into an ant, I don't see why he can't do something similar, but that is for different purposes. And that's just my opinion, but I do think there's logical sense in why he could do something like that. Why he could warp reality to that extent, thanks to his ability over names, summon names into existence, change the earth around him, change the world around him, thanks to his ability to alter names. We see how he's able to alternate and... Oh, sorry, I keep trying to burp. Keep needing to burp. Where he can hide all of the royal palace through optical illusions by using his Zanpakuto. Meaning he should be able to do very, very similar things. Or write on himself, 10 times stronger, kind of like a Kaioken ability. There is no limit, in my opinion, to what this can do. And you might be thinking, Jack, that's all well and good, but why didn't he do that? Narratively, I guess, for what his power represents, he could do something like that, but he didn't, so obviously he can't do it. Why, though, and this is my reasoning, the reason why I think that this has been the case, I think he might not have called out the proper Bankai's name for his technique. Or, secondly, and I didn't even get this into the previous video, we know that he calls out the old term for a Bankai. But why did he change the name to Bankai? He's the one that created Bankai. He named it Bankai. Meaning, why did he ever change the name for it? Maybe he thought that Bankai awakened people's power more, so he had to call out the old name for his Bankai to be weaker. Why would it have to be weaker? Because we see what happens with Senjumaru when she activates her Bankai thanks to the 3 sacrifices of the remaining Royal Guard members. It shakes all 3 worlds, it's that powerful. Why, when Ichibei goes into Bankai, a character that is stronger than Senjumaru for all intents and purposes, at least at all our knowledge, why does he not have a similar reaction where, everyone's going wild because the 3 worlds are going to collapse on themselves? I think it's because the other Zero members are still alive. Now, you might even say because Ichibei is so strong, there need to be 4 sacrifices that need to get taken underway for Ichibei to activate his power in its entirety. But it makes no sense why Senjimaru would have a bigger reaction on the worlds than Ichibei. This is what leads me to think that Ichibei wasn't going all out. Maybe he can't go all out. Maybe it doesn't just shake the worlds, it would totally, like, turn all the world into nothingness thanks to his blackness. Maybe that's the type of power, tremendous power that he has, so that he can't utilize it. Because it's like, think about it this way. The Soul King, he has a name. How was he named without Ichibei naming him that? This whole concept of names is incredibly powerful, and he's such a nebulous and mysterious character where this is just, the potential for him is just absolutely outrageous. I'm not saying he's stronger than the Soul King, because we obviously see that he isn't. He has limitations, obviously. But I do think that he was holding back in his fight with Yuha, just from the facts that we see in the show, about how Senjimaru was having more of an effect on the world, and how come he can go into his Bankai without sacrifices being needed. I do reckon he either called out the incorrect name, or he was just an incomplete Bankai thanks to the sacrifices not being in play, or he called out the first name of a Bankai rather than the Bankai itself, like I was getting into. That is my reasoning to why I think he was holding back, and why he potentially needed to hold back, to not have an adverse effect on the world around him to such a degree, because of how powerful that he is. But that's just my opinion. Let me know down in the comments what you think Ichibei's reasons may have been. But I promised you all a reason to why I had to redo this video, why this video has now taken over an hour to do. In the beginning, I said that Ichibei traveling 4,000 kilometers to then instantly appear in front of Yuha was not that impressive. Everyone could do it. The reason why I was thinking that is because I was thinking that it was either 4 kilometers he traveled or 400 kilometers. Either way, 400 kilometers is just as good as what Stark does, if not weaker, and 4 kilometers is nothing. But I really was forgetting the goddamn 0. I was even thinking, should I just chuck in a little editing kind of segment into the video apologizing? But it was such an outrageous failure that to use some Rock Lee kind of work ethic of having to punish myself, I needed to refilm the whole video. You guys deserve better than that. 4 kilometers instead of 4,000. Come on, Jack. It was absolutely pathetic. It didn't change the fact that I did say, because he is like one of the 2 strongest, he's going to be quicker than pretty much everyone. But there's the concrete proof of just how fast he is and how deadly he is. I felt like such a moron. I was rewatching the video back and I'm like, this is not acceptable. What have I said here? So this is the perfect take. I'm going to put it in. I'm going to get it released to you guys tonight. I hope you really, really like it. It's giving me a new appreciation for Ichibei to think about. And I think it's not outrageous to say that he was holding back for my reasons given. Let me know down in the comments, though, if you think, nah, Jack, you're completely out of touch here. Out of touch with reality. I reckon it was very likely that was the case. Ichibei Hyōsube, one of the strongest characters in all of Bleach. It's been a treat being able to talk to him. Everyone, have a lovely night.